Okay, today we're doing a video, something a subject I've been wanting to do for a long time. It's one of something very important to us here. Is being self-reliant. We've something we've strived to do for years. And it's been a slow progress, and you learn and add and take away, so we're at a spot now where we have to purchase very little of our food. We purchase the Quail Food, which is 20 bucks for 50 pounds. We purchase some Koi Food, and we have a weekly bill of rats for rats and mice, which is about $10, give or take, depending on the season, but very low. And a lot of that is done in trade. So we're going to go through what we do here to keep it simple as possible, and yet be self-reliant with the wide range of animals here. We don't just keep ball pythons. We don't just keep monitors. We have everything from tiny little mourning geckos and reed frogs, all the way up to the Savannah monitor and our green tree monitors and bearded dragons and the water cobras, and a wide variety here. And so being self-reliant is not simple, but we do our best, and here's how we do it. Most of our enclosures are bioactive. Almost all of them are bioactive, and including in that bioactive is superworms. We put them in the dirt, and they help clean and eat and stuff. And as we know from superworms, hatch the beetles. So I see these beetles in the cages, nearly daily, and I'll just pick them out. I don't go through the pupating process of separating worms and going through all that whole hassle. So I keep them in a very simple container. This one they're outgrowing, and I don't have a huge population, but it's just loaded with them without doing any pupating. The small little container. This is Quail Food, which is actually from leftover from in the cleaning out the pen. Every once in a while, I'll clean out the feeders, and I'll use that food. Just throw it in here for these guys, and they'll eat it. And I got the water crystals. You keep that in all my bug containers, and then just every couple days I'll sprinkle in a little greens. It'll little banana peel. You can see oranges, whatever is left over from the children's food, apple cores. I make bearded dragon salads, a couple times a week, 3-4 times a week. I make salads. So any of the trimmings from the bearded dragon salads, it's all good. So as long as they have moisture, they won't eat your eggs. The eggs will just be mixed in here. So about once a month, I'll take these containers out, replace them with clean containers, dump all of the Quail Food in the bottom into this container. In here is the little eggs will hatch into the worms. You can see they're just everywhere. They are thick in here. This dirt is just crawling with them. And this is only a couple months worth of superworms. Or we're pretty much starting with the simplest to the most complex of the bugs that we keep. I go through here about once a week with a strainer, and we'll scoop out any of the feeding size ones, and I feed them off weekly. So I don't go through a whole bunch of different trays and sizes. I keep it simple because I'm feeding them off. And we have animals that can eat these tiny ones. When you have baby bearded dragons, anyone who's done that, baby chameleons, you know how much food they go through. It's unreal. You have superworms, you have them from tiny little babies all the way up, so you can screen it and pick out your sizes for the type of animal you're feeding. Super productive, super easy. You can use bran, oatmeal, chicken feed, just about anything to keep for the substrate. I just use the Quail Food because we have it, a lot of it, and it's cheap. So that's a very simple way we keep do our superworms. The next one we have our red runners. Another thing about growing insects, the biggest problem is heat. They have to, all of these, need to be warm to reproduce quickly. And so I've had heat pads taped to the side of these things. I had a closet full of them heated. It worked to varying degrees. Had set up a small colony of dubia on top of my monitor enclosure just because the thing just radiates heat, and it just exploded, way surpassed what any of my other ones had done for months. So I moved all my bins. I have no extra heat, no extra anything on them. They sit on top of my monitor enclosure, which, those basking spots are 130 degrees, 125 degrees. So the top of that enclosure is pretty warm, and that's it. I don't do any additional heat. So maybe utilize your heat sources that you already have with your enclosures at home instead of trying to tape up and do all kinds of crazy things with these bugs. You might have an enclosure that's already radiating heat that you can just set them on top of, and it works. We've had just unbelievable success with it, to the point where in the off season, where we're not feeding a lot of babies, I'm freezing bugs, and we're feeding a lot of animals. When we got the bearded dragons go into brumation, and we don't have a bunch of clutches of bearded dragons and chameleons and whatnot hatching. I freeze them. I've got containers of frozen bugs. I'll show you here in the video. But especially these red runners, they produce. They're not my favorite bug to have. They're very fast. They tend to escape enclosures. But they multiply like crazy. And the real reason we keep the red runners is one, they reproduce so crazy, and so I can freeze them, and then I mix them up with quail eggs, just the frozen one. Mix them up with the quail eggs for the monitors. They love it. Makes a little soup, a little breakfast. They love it, especially for the Savannah monitor that needs a lot of bugs. It's hard to keep a Savannah monitor fed with a lot of bugs. These things are great. And you put him in there, he gets to chase them around. It gives him a lot of exercises. He digs for them. But also I can just fill a bowl full of frozen ones, mix it with a couple quail eggs, shell and all, and that's a fantastic meal for him. And I have times like this where no one knows supplies are low, no one knows what's open, you're not supposed to be going out. I have a freezer full of bugs. I don't have to worry about my animals. I sprinkle them on top of the bearded dragon salad. Our bacillus, they'll eat them. They'll eat them out of a bowl. These frozen bugs will go a long ways. And so, at times of year when you're still producing bugs, and you're not feeding as many, feed them off, freeze them off. So these are the red runners. They're also known as Turkestan roaches, but they I literally emptied this bin and froze pounds of them, literally about 2-3 months ago, leaving mostly just adults, and it's just, you can see they go crazy. But the best thing about them is the babies are so tiny that you can, for the little baby bearded dragons and little chameleons, I don't have to go buy pinhead crickets and even fruit flies, maybe a little bit for the chameleons right off the bat, but they'll almost replace fruit flies. They're so small. So that's the main reason we keep these, is for being able to freeze them and being able to feed the young animals. And how much they produce. It's unprecedented how much they produce. It's kind of like the superworms. And just any trimmings I throw in here, and they eat it. I always keep a dry food with all of them. You can use cat food. You want it, you're feeding your animals these, so you want to use a high grade thing. I use Quail Food. It's high in protein, 28% protein. So they always have a dry food. They always have a water source of water crystals, and I feed vegetables. I go into these bins about 2-3 times a week, and I'm always adding fresh vegetables, topping off their dry food, topping off their water crystals. And I do them all I do all my bins very similar. I do the cardboard around the outside. They like it dark. And I use this perforated cardboard preferably because you'll see in here these little worms. Those are called lesser mealworms or buffalo beetle larvae. Those are another fantastic feeder, and I have these buffalo beetles in all of my enclosures. See, look under here. Look at that. I just lift that up, and I can scoop all those little worms I want from, and underneath the food bowl and underneath the water bowl will be the same, just covered with those little tiny larvae. And if you open up, if I tear apart this perforated cardboard, it is full of them in there. So if I have a whole bunch of bearded dragons to feed, little baby bearded dragons, I just separate this, rip this apart, and it is full. Well, I'll do it on another one because this is a new bin I just recently redid. But you separate those apart, and it's full of those little larvae. The buffalo beetles they're a little black beetle. Right here is one, and they are cleaner beetles. They clean up poop. They will eat up your dead beetles, and they are essential. I put them in every one of these bins, and they create those worms. And I also have those buffalo beetle. They're just like isopods. They're full in all of my bioactive enclosures, and they reproduce so crazily. Like, I feed them to the quail. It's a treat for the quail. They love them. It's a favorite. And they have the tiny ones. The hatchling buffalo beetle larvae are so small. I can give them to the little morning geckos and the reed frog hatchlings that will come out of tadpoles. So we have an assortment of size of food for everything, starting from the tiniest little animals all the way up to our monitors, all in a very small space. And having those buffalo beetle in every enclosure really helps. I mean, every bin. All right, so you want your bins to retain the heat and some humidity, so that's why I have this airflow. So you get some airflow, but limited. I don't want it completely open. All this is fine screen with I just hot melt glued it in. With the red runners, I've noticed if they run out of food at all, they'll actually chew through this. I'm sure there's a better screen you can use. So with them, all I did is I put a double layer, put a layer on top and a layer on bottom with the red runners, and so that worked for them. But very simple for any bin. Another thing I do, which this isn't the best example of because I don't have a real problem with the dubias, is I keep all my stuff low. I don't stack it all the way to the top. I've noticed you get a lot more escapees if you have your stuff stacked all the way to the top. Like I said, this one's not a great example. The dubias they're big and they don't really get out of here. The red runners, I'm a lot more careful with it. I keep it a lot lower, and some of these other ones. But like this, here's what I'm saying. Like in here, look at here, it's just full of the buffalo beetle and their larvae. So if you need a bunch real quick, you just pull one of these out, put it in a bin, open it up, and you can feed a colony of hatchling bearded dragons just like that. Phenomenal. But so the dubias, that's everyone's favorite. They reproduce like crazy in the proper conditions. It took a while to get them going. Literally, it's best you set up your bin and let it go for 6 months, a year if you can, to just get a good colony going before you start taking from them. If you want it to get really established, we recycle everything, but like these kind of shipping boxes, these work great. This, I just take it, shake it out, shake it into the bin, and you can separate your bugs. Same kind of thing, water crystals, a little food bin, dry food. Even, see, I throw my extra crested gecko diet that they don't eat, throw it in these things. Tomorrow that will be completely clean. It'll look like you ran it through the dishwasher. So yeah, nothing goes to waste around here. Everything gets used or reused. Have too many bugs, or go after the quail. See, look at the buffalo beetles at the bottom there, just they're clean. They keep this thing clean. But I mean, I pull hundreds of dubia out of here every day, all season long, and they just replenish themselves. I always put my adults back. Here's the male with the wings. I put my big breeders back. Here's the females. You can tell when they're silver like that, those are breeders, the big shiny ones. I just put these ones back. So I don't want to feed off my breeders unless I really have too many. But I don't mess with crickets anymore. Only if I'm leaving on vacation, I'll order a bunch of crickets and put them in and fill all the enclosures with them, so they have a lot of food when I'm gone. But I don't like feeding. I just don't like dealing with crickets. I don't try and raise them. So these little bins, I got different size holes, so you can separate the sizes quickly. And
where are the holes?
See, you got holes here, smaller holes in the next one, and then no holes in here. And so you can separate the sizes very quickly, just like that. Boom, as I'm feeding them, I just got little pieces of lettuce in there to separate these bins to keep them up. So these ones these are the bigger ones I'll feed to the bearded dragons and the monitor. These are like the size I'll feed to the chameleon and the alligator lizards, your smaller, the geckos, that kind of stuff. And these smallest ones, I'll put these back in, or I'll separate out the buffalo beetles and dump the buffalo beetles into enclosures for bioactive, or I'll feed them to the quail. I give them as a treat for the quail, and they love them. So it depends, or you can separate the worms out too if you want from there. So this is just a quick way of separating them out. And if you get into here, it is, it is full. This is it's a very healthy colony going well. And so I'll feed these. I'll make sure they always have food, but about every other day I try and throw some stuff in here. But they will eat just about anything. But lots of fresh greens, healthy dry food, good water source, lots of places to hide, to get away, separate themselves. Another thing I've done is when you get too many babies in there, it seems they'll stop producing or won't produce near as much. So I started a second colony with just I think I put maybe 15 females and 3 or 4 males in there, and then I've been taking a lot of these small babies, the smallest ones, and dumping them in there and letting them raise up in there, and so to encourage more breeding out of my big colony. So it's not overcrowded, there's not too many babies, they don't think there's a lot of babies, so it'll encourage them to reproduce more. And I can, as those ones grow, I can start sorting from that one and picking mine without interrupting my breeding colony. So you don't want to exhaust your colony in one season and not get it down too low so it's not reproducing enough to keep your supply going. So you got to keep that balance going. You don't want to overfeed from your colony. So that's why like some weeks I'll pull from this bin, some weeks I'll pull from the red runners, some weeks I'll pull from or days, I'll rotate. One day I'll pull a bunch of the worms, and then so they'll eat those for a couple days, and then I'll pull from the dubia bin, and so they'll eat those for a week or a few days, and then same thing with the red runners. So they're getting a constant rotation in their diet. Sorry, that's my work email. I'm working from home here, like many of us in these times, but it's also allowing us a chance to make more of these videos that we've been talking about but haven't had the time to do. And here is this is an orange head roach. These are the biggest. They're very cool. I almost gave up on them because they don't reproduce near as quickly, but they are a favorite of the monitors, so I still keep them around. And they're a subterranean roach. They like to dig, so they're great for the bioactive enclosure. So you can actually include them as part of your bioactive enclosure for like the false water cobras that don't eat them, and they can some dirty animals, that bigger animals, and maybe that these can really take care of a lot of waste. So for those of you with bigger bioactive enclosures, you might want to look into adding your orangehead roaches in your dirt, because they really can take care of a lot. But they don't multiply near as quickly, but they do. And we have a decent colony of them. But I don't take a lot from them. I take all the mid-side ones, almost to adults, mostly as a treat from the monitors. These tubes are easy. I like the tubes because you can just shake them out. And I don't have to disturb the hole. I don't have to disturb this whole bin, which most days I don't even get into this deeper stuff. I just go in, shake out some tubes, and then I got enough food for what I'm doing. Like, let's give Oscar a treat. He loves these. And he's been on a diet lately because he is a little thick. So, sorry, we have we put in a separator here because we believe, I'm sure Lolita's gravid, our female green tree monitor, and she's been real sketchy lately. She's been off food for about 4 or 5 days and really sketchy. So I don't think she wants anyone seeing where she puts her eggs. So I got this covered up to just make her feel a little more secure. So, but Oscar, on the other hand, he's been trying to get over there digging. So you'll see he's probably all dirty because he's been digging, trying to get back over to his girl. Hey, Oscar, where you at, guy? Want a bug? Want a bug? Want a bug? Where you at? Can't even see you. Oh, look at here he comes. Hey, dude. Hi. You come to say hi to the camera? Hi. Yeah, he's a little dirty. He's been digging in here, and he even sees her through this little crack and tries to get over there. But he's in that back corner. Okay, so here quickly separated out, enough for a quick day's feeding. You got every size of bug that you could need for our various animals. Quickly separated out and cleanly. And here's I got a freezer literally full of these containers just of bugs for trying times when you don't know what's coming. And then that brings us to the heartbeat of the operation here is these little guys, as knickers. One of the best things we've done here is the quail. They are so productive, and besides being super cute and fun, they are an extremely economical way to produce food for your animals and if you want yourself. We have a flock of less than 20 birds, and I'm hatching out. I do 60 eggs every 10 days with 2 little styrofoam hovabators at this point, working on stepping that up, as well as our numbers of females. But and every 10 days, so we're doing 60 eggs, so we're getting 40 to 50 birds every 10 days or so. So I can feed my animals and more than make up for by selling off some chicks to regular people, reptile owners, for any of my the bills I have for rodents. I have a couple snakes that are stuck on ball pythons, of course, that are stuck on rats, and then you have a few smaller ones that need, little fuzzies or pinkies or things like that. But almost all my snakes eat quail. I'll rotate rats in all their diet. Every week, some of the quail eaters will get, a rat, so it gets mixed up. But the majority of the the monitors, they get about 1 or 2 a week. They also eat the eggs. We eat the eggs. Our skink eats the eggs. The bearded dragons eat the eggs. The quail eggs are just a phenomenal source of all kinds of vitamins, and you don't have the salmonella, so you can eat them raw. They're literally the heartbeat of our operation here. Our rodent bill and our bug bill was getting out of hand, and so if we wanted to continue to increase our collection, to breed more, to upgrade the quality of our collection, something had to change, and so we started. The quail was the dubias were first, the quail were second, and then we quickly expanded to these other bugs, and it's been and now we literally make more a week on the food than we spend. So it's tough times out there right now, but hopefully some of these tips will help us get through them and maybe be prepared better for the next one. All right, thanks for watching. Until next time, people.